Thank you. My name is Ambassador Tumwa. Since we are dealing with election, I think I want to say I'm Commissioner Jack Tumwa, former commissioner. You are asking me about what is Iebc. That is a big question. Iebc, in my view, is suffering because of the polluted political position that this country is going through. Iebc is supposed to be an independent commission. It is a creation of the commission. But actually, you can ask many questions. Is Iebc independent as it is expected to be, to enable it to perform as it is required? In practice, in theory, yes. But in practice, there are so many things that are lacking. Like financial independence, it is not there. Iebc is supposed to have people chosen to man that institution without any external forces. Apparently, and from what we are seeing, it looks like that is not coming up. The curricular report recommended that commissioners should be appointed at least 2 years before the elections. External forces made it so difficult that the new commissioners came in a short while before the elections. Now, those are the external forces that make it very difficult for commissioners to acquaint themselves with what is supposed to be done in IEC and perform to our expectations. If you look, Iebc, although independent, is expected to operate in cooperation with other agencies. Iebc has to work with the government. And when you talk of government, I'm thinking about the executive, I'm thinking about the judiciary, I'm thinking about the legislature. Unless these three groups come and work in liaison, work as a team, it becomes extremely difficult for Iebc to perform to our expectations. One good example is looking at the judiciary. There are cases which came up to the last minute. We had a judgment a day before the elections. How was that judgment supposed to be communicated to officers who were up in the field preparing for elections? It becomes extremely difficult. Look at finance. The financing has been extremely poor. Iebc has been operating at almost a quarter what is expected to do. If the budgeting of the government was such that Iebc gets money in time, it plans in time, perhaps, and I'm still using the word perhaps very deliberately, we would be in a better situation than where we were. The third government agency is the parliament. I think the parliament has been one of the worst performers in this country. The 11th parliament, the 12th parliament, was supposed to assist to get legislation to give the constitution force so that institutions like Iebc are very clear on what is supposed to be done. The two parliaments concentrated on other things other than legislating in good time, the regulations, the laws that are supposed to guide Iebc. It therefore becomes extremely difficult for Iebc to perform in a vacuum. The laws that are brought up at the last minute cause Iebc to be a mess in its performance. So in my view, some of those are some of the things that have been making it difficult for Iebc to prepare sufficiently to deliver to the people of Kenya what is required.
You're talking about
historical. That is, in fact, I've gone to what is supposed to be historical. Iebc. Well, let me go to the history. Election body started with a head who was referred to as supervisor of elections. Based, I think it was housed at the Attorney General. Remember Mr. Montgomery? Long time ago. Then I think there came another supervisor of elections called Nyarango, and Justice Chesoni was the first person to head what we call Electoral Commission of Kenya. In my view, he did reasonably well. That is the time when we moved from one-party system to multi-party. And what happened was, because of the multi-party, some legislators felt that the commissioners who were then in place were representing the KANU government. They decided, I think through the IPPG, that political parties identify 10 other commissioners to join the Electoral Commission. I happened to be one of those 10 who went to join the commission. When we got to the commission, we went burning. We wanted to teach Chesona a lesson. But being a senior citizen of this country, he worked very well, built a team spirit between those people who were supposed to be government and those of us who were supposed to be from the opposition. That is why we delivered the 1997 elections. That is why we delivered the 2002 elections. That is how we delivered the Constitution of Kenya amendment. They went very well. Iebc cannot function when there are groups formed within that commission. I have argued before, and we've got the past to look at, that perhaps this question of interviewing commissioners, political parties, if we have to respect them, perhaps they should be given an opportunity to identify the people who go to work in the Electoral Commission. It worked very well during our time. I don't see why not. This pretending that people go for interview, of course they go for interview. Of course they perform very well at the interview. But their forces, they belong to this or the other. It is good for everybody to know that so-and-so is chosen. Like we went in, people knew that we had gone in from the opposition. The other ones was allegedly the government, but we managed to build a team. There was teamwork. It is teamwork which delivered these two elections plus what we had in 005. It can be done. But the question of putting in people supposedly having done very well at interviews, you know, a commissioner, you have to look at just more than perhaps the academic. You have to look at the maturity of the person. You have to look at the honesty of the person. And political parties, if they can balance, it's possible they can deliver election as Kenyan would like to have it.
Talking about maybe people in power, and if that's the case, where does this leave them?
Well, I don't have any evidence to make that suggestion. You know, compromising requires two. It takes just two to compromise. If I compromise with you, perhaps the third person will find it very difficult to know. But looking at what is happening, you have to look at their performance. There is the law which is very clear to guide the performance of the Electoral Commission. I think we have to weigh the performance of the commissioners vis-a-vis the law that exists. Are they working according to what is provided for in our laws, or are they seeking guidance from other people? But as I say, if I go for an interview, because I've been sponsored by so and so, we are human beings. You will be tempted to do things other than what the law requires.
Now, talking of the law,
the biggest incompetence I identified is failure to work as a team. What came up at the last minute was extremely embarrassing for the country. We would have expected the chairman, Iebc, to do everything possible, following the law as it is, to get consensus before he comes out to announce the results. If we fail to get consensus, then again the law provides that he has to take a vote. And then he should have gone to that. The country is now in a very, very complicated situation because here we have four commissioners saying nay and 3 saying yes. I really don't, I'm not a lawyer and I don't want to attempt to go that direction because I may misdirect my listeners. I think I want to leave it at that. But I would have been happy if Chebukati made every effort possible to get a compromise between the commissioners. But it's also so, because we are talking about figures. It is not something that you can assume. Everything is there, black and white. You bring them on that table, you look at them, and someone will be mad to say 2 plus 2 doesn't make a 4. You know, if the figures were up there, you know, I think people would not be as disappointed as they are. But we are told, it is alleged, I don't know whether it is true, that at some stage the chairman decided to operate alone. Perhaps these are some of the things that we have to wait to get clearance, because as far as we are concerned, up to this stage, I think those are still allegations.
Talking of the...
I think the improvements that I need to see in Iebc is, well, let's take what has happened now. I think really everything went perfectly well. The voting day, I voted. You can see I went to vote, and I was happy with the arrangements at the polling stations, as it were. The officers were better organized. But something I've been telling the media for several times, I have been arguing, is to say over-reliance on electronics system could be dangerous. And I think to a large extent I was proved right, because in a station where I voted, several people were turned off, especially old people. I don't know whether we will be able to get a sample of the people who are not able to vote. But that electronic system rejected very many old people from voting. The law, the court had passed the previous night that they don't use the black book. That again was very unfortunate. But we argued because in a station again where I voted, the presiding officer had put a list which everybody could see. And there are some people who had names on that list. They had IDs, and the presiding officer said, no, you can't vote because you are rejected. So communication is very, very important for them to be able to actually do what is right. That is, otherwise, the streaming of the results to me was reasonably good. The problem comes, like it did in 2007, at the tallying and at the announcement. I've already said what I would have expected Chebukati to do if I were him, but I don't know the forces as at that time. Remember in 2007, we had the same problem. The results came out, but at that time the law was that once the results come, the chairman was expected to announce those results without alteration. And if anybody wanted to change, you go to court. Remember, we did the checking of the votes the previous night. And some of us came and agreed that there were some things that didn't look like they were right. We issued a statement to that effect to say, yes, the audit that had been carried out indicated that some things were not right. But unfortunately, by the time we were saying that, the country was already aflame. It was not very much we can do about it. So to improve, as I said, we have to get this teamwork and agreement in whatever is done.
There has been, what can this be attributed to?
It's not a long history, a short history. Because I guess you're making a reference to Akombe, who resigned out there. Akombe herself stated that she was threatened, that she was not comfortable with the environment within the commission, and that is how she resigned. Now, there were other 3 commissioners who resigned thereafter. My belief, I have no evidence, but I think it was because there was external forces. I said there must have been some external forces which wanted to dismember the Electoral Commission, perhaps so that it dissolves. I'm not sure about that. But I think my thinking of external forces is because the 3 commissioners, after they were thrown out, they were given appointments. And that is the force I'm trying to say. There must have been some forces from external which persuaded these commissioners to resign so as to disable the commission. So it is not a very healthy thing to do. And this is why I say the commission, independent as it's supposed to be, so long as it continues to depend on their sponsors, it becomes extremely difficult for it to exercise that independence that is supposed to exercise when doing its duty. It becomes difficult, and it is going to continue. My thinking is that perhaps really it is time for Kenyans to sit back and look at the entire electoral law to seal these loopholes, which have caused us problems every other time. Changing of commissioners is not going to solve this problem. Let us find a formula which will clean up the law as it is. The time of getting money, the collaboration, and when I talk of collaboration, I'm talking collaboration with all the other groups, including the media. By the way, I think Iebc has to be given a credit because this time he did very well in terms of sharing his work with the media, and it was quite transparent. So all these have to come in, and I think time is of importance. We delayed. We started doing 5-year work in a few months, and this is some of what caused a lot of the misunderstanding.
Commissioner, there's something you talked about, the conflict among the commission.
Yeah. During our time, once all the results are given, the chairman had no option other than to announce. That is what put Kivuitu into problems. Now, for the current situation, I am not very clear what the law requires. My opinion is Iebc should have gone an extra mile to talk to his colleagues, because they are colleagues. After all, they had done very well from the time they joined, to agree, according to the law, according to the figures that were there, to take a position. If they find they are not going to have a consensus, they should have gone another step to vote. And at the voting stage, using the figures that were available, Iebc should have announced the results according to the majority and according to the available figures that he could bring to the media, to the Kenyans, to see we voted this way because these figures dictated our position, and this is how we were.
My last question to you.
It is just like you asking me, what do we do to reduce corruption in this country? We've got sufficient laws to guard against that. It is not just the laws. In my view, we have sufficient laws. What I refer to is enabling laws. The Constitution is very, very clear. The Parliament has to sit down and give enabling laws. For instance, to say, like they have done with the courts, a certain percentage of the GDP goes to the Commission. That gives them some element of independence. To go and read what Kriegler said about appointment of commissioners. By the way, we did that thing, we gave it to Kriegler, Kriegler gave it out, and now we call it Kriegler. It was ECK which worked out all those requirements. Commissioners have to be in place in time. Thirdly, I would recommend that commissioners be staggered so that we don't have commissioners being appointed at the same time. Half can be appointed and then half, so that it gives that element of continuity. The third thing I'm totally opposed to, and I've talked about it several times, is creating two centers of power at the Commission. The Secretariat has to work to the Commission. But as it is now, the Secretariat is fairly independent from the Commission, and if there is a conflict, like it was Chiloba and Iebc, it causes problems. We thought it right that the Secretariat should report the Commission. Thirdly, and these are some of the things we recommended when we were the CCK, the position of the Registrar of Political Parties. You know, it has been made independent, operate from outside. And we're creating so many duplication. The Registrar of Political Parties should be, in my view, a department within the Electoral Commission, because it is a feeder of the Electoral Commission. When it works independently, coordination will create a problem of coordination, and it makes it, again, very difficult for it to perform.
Maybe in a scale of 0 to 10, how much will you give us the completed election?
You want me to be subjective or objective? Well, I think really there are a number of things that didn't go right. Let me give them 50. 5, to be direct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Karibu.